Welcome to First Time for Everything, a podcast for curious people. I'm your host, Dani Elliott. I've toured the world as a backing vocalist for some of the biggest names in music, owned a prop rental business, ran a vintage boutique out of a camper I renovated, and I've had a lot of firsts in my life. I created this podcast in hopes of inspiring you to take a chance on something you've been wanting to try for the first time. We're going to discover a lot of really cool things together, and I'm so happy you're here. Welcome back, first timers. I am beyond excited to bring you today's episode. I've been looking forward to talking with this guest for months, and we finally made it happen. Today, I'm talking with Allie Phillips, Democratic nominee for Tennessee House District 75. At 29 years old, she's breathing new life into Tennessee politics. She's tenacious, thoughtful, stands up for what she believes in, and most importantly, listens to her constituents, something you know is pretty rare these days if you've been paying any attention to Tennessee politics. How she's turned heartbreak into a passion to be the change she wants to see is absolutely inspiring. I do want to put a trigger warning on this episode today in that we will be talking about pregnancy loss. So if you're in a place right now where you feel like you can't absorb that information, we completely understand and encourage you to come back if and when you have the capacity. This is First Time Running for Office with Allie Phillips. One of the reasons you're probably listening to the show is because you like to learn new things, and Skillshare is the place to do just that. One of the founding principles of the internet was to give people access to information they wouldn't normally have access to, and Skillshare has taken this to the next level by creating 29,000 courses with new ones added to their roster every week, ranging from creative writing to marketing to website development and really whatever you're looking to get better at. You'll get to try Skillshare free for 1 month before choosing between two very affordable options at $29 a month or $165 for the year, which comes out to about $13.75 monthly, which is an insane deal for the amount of knowledge you'll be getting access to. Get 30% off your annual membership at the link in the show notes and start learning, well, everything. Now back to the show. Hi, first timers. We are here today with someone I've been so excited to talk with, Allie Phillips. She's running for Tennessee House of Representatives 75. And if you are in her district, you need to be voting for her. She's an incredible woman. And I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you again so much for making the time to talk with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I'm honored and I'm
Oh my gosh.
excited. I get to share more.
Yeah, I am excited to spread your story and have more people learn about you and your mission. Did you ever think you would be running for office someday?
Absolutely not. Politics was never something I was interested in. I tell people I voted in presidential elections and that was about it. I didn't even
Hmm.
do the off year elections that are
Yeah.
for local and county commissioner and stuff like that. I never really paid attention to politics. And I think a lot of that has to do with the area I grew up in. Being in the South, politics isn't really a big topic of conversation. And so I grew up with liberal parents in a conservative town. And so I really just kind of heard things from both sides of parties. And I was just like, they're both dumb. Like, I'm not going to listen to either of them. And so for the longest time, I just considered myself an independent, not knowing what that actually meant. I was just like, yeah, I don't associate with party. I'm just me. And so I was an independent, but I always voted for Democrats when
Mm.
I did go vote. And so it took me growing up. It took me moving out of my small town to actually have my eyes open to be like, oh, wow, there is a whole other world out here, and politics kind of dictates what happens in it. And that's when I started to pay more attention. And I say it was in college when it really kind of clicked for me because I went to Middle Tennessee State University and went there for journalism. And so when I was in college, there was that 2016 presidential campaign between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. I think one of the biggest watched campaigns in history. And so I had to do a lot of my projects around politics.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh God, this is all awful. And I truly at that point made the decision that I was like, okay, I'm not an independent because I care about a lot of things
Mm.
on one, and that one party actually cares about these things that I do. And so that was the Democratic Party. And so I shifted from independent to Democrat in college and then have stayed where I am since.
Mm-hmm. That's it's so interesting to just hear people's stories about how the evolution kind of happens from kind of just like kind of paying attention to becoming like really passionate about it. And I know there's a lot more to that story. So would you share your story as to how you decided to run this for this election year?
Absolutely. So I'll backtrack and start from college again.
Mm-hmm.
When Donald Trump won the presidential election back in 2016, that was kind of a big eye opener for me because I was like, how do you win? How does somebody win a popular vote, but they don't win the presidency?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, the Electoral College. Well, what the heck is that? And so I was really kind of just stunned at how much I didn't know when I was over here thinking it was simple, and it's
Mm.
not. It's not. It's not simple at all. But during Donald Trump's presidency, he appointed those Supreme Court justices that have recently overturned Roe v. Wade and put decisions back into the hands of the states. And they claim that's a beautiful thing. They call it, this is what the people wanted, but it's not, because you have states like Tennessee, where I am, where we have a supreme, or not supreme, a super majority, an extreme super majority Republican Party that doesn't legislate off of their constituents' needs or wants. They
Mm-hmm.
legislate off of what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so Roe v. Wade was overturned a couple years ago, and the abortion ban, the trigger ban in Tennessee, went into effect within a couple months. And I was pissed. I was very vocal about it online. I have a TikTok account that I've had since 2020, I think when everybody got on TikTok. And I was just voicing my opinions and my concerns and trying to educate people the best I could. Now, I was advocating for women to have a right to an abortion when myself, I would never do that. I was like, I would never get one personally, but it's not my place to tell another woman she can or can't. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to fight for women to have the right to choose. And so trigger ban went into effect in August. I found out I was pregnant in November. And this was a planned for and wanted pregnancy. My husband and I, we just got married in March. We just bought our house, just moved to Clarksville, and we were excited. I have a daughter. She was 5 at the time. She was ready to become a big sister. And everything was just kind of progressing as it should. We told our friends and family. We got through the first trimester. So the chances of a miscarriage happening went away, slimmed down, and we started buying things. That right there behind me is the crib we bought. I
Mm-hmm.
still have it. We bought clothes, we had bottles, blankets, everything that you could need. And my routine anatomy scan was coming up, and that anatomy scan usually happens between 18 and 20 weeks. And that's where you find out pretty much the health and the stability of that pregnancy. Like, is the fetus, is the baby healthy? That's where they check the organs and all that stuff for people who don't know what it does. And we were excited to go to the anatomy scan because I was like, ooh, we get to see her, because we knew we were having a girl. We did a gender reveal ultrasound a couple of weeks prior. We named her Miley Rose. And so we made it a family trip. Me, my husband, and my daughter, Allie, we all went to the OB together. And we got in, did the ultrasound, and it was quick. Normally, these ultrasounds last a good bit, but this one went quick. And the doctor was like, the technician was like, I need to grab your doctor. I've seen some pretty serious things. And so she left the room, came back a few minutes later with my doctor. My doctor just immediately went into telling me, like, I just looked at your scans. We have seen some issues. It seems that there's no amniotic fluid, little to no amniotic fluid surrounding the fetus. Both of her kidneys seem to not have formed, and that she was measuring about 4 weeks behind. So she was measuring as like a 15-week fetus.
Mm.
And my doctor said that there were some other concerns that they had, but they wanted to refer me over to a high risk specialist to just do further scans and further testing just to be sure. And, when your doctor starts telling you these things, my mind immediately just goes to like, okay, so how do we fix it? Like, what does that mean? What did I do wrong? How do I fix it? Um, and that's what I had to sit with for 4 days when I went home. I was just Googling everything, like,
Mm-hmm.
fetal development and kidneys or lack of amniotic fluid, just like, how do I fix all this? And so my high risk appointment was 4 days later. Thank God. Because when we originally called, they were booked out for like a month or so. But luckily, while we were on hold, somebody canceled an appointment that Friday. And so, excuse me, we were able to get that canceled appointment. And like, when I look back on it now, I'm like, the timing of that was literally perfect, because if we would have waited a month, you know,
Yeah.
but so we went to the high risk appointment. This time, just me and my husband. And again, they did the anatomy scan. This time, they did take their time with it. And the doctor came in and started going over everything they saw. She reconfirmed what my OB said, that there was no amniotic fluid, that both of her kidneys formed abnormally and weren't functioning, and that she was at a 15-week fetus development. But that wasn't all. Along with her kidneys, her stomach and her bladder did not form and were not functioning. They could not find any lung development. Her heart only had 2 out of 4 working chambers. And the like big diagnosis was, her brain had a condition called semilobar holoprosencephaly. And pretty much what that is her brain didn't split completely down the middle.
Mm.
And 3%, 3% of fetuses survive to birth with that diagnosis alone. And they usually pass within the first 6 months to a year of their life.
Mm.
Um, so with just that brain diagnosis, she was already, deemed not
Yeah.
compatible. But then everything else combined, they're like, there's nothing that's going to come out of this. And so, during her explaining everything, we're looking at the screen, she's pointing at her body parts, and in my mind, I'm still doing the like, okay, well, like, we can get kidney transplants, we can do all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And when she went to the heart and the brain, I was like, that's it. Like, we're done.
Mm.
There's no hope in that. And the first question I asked is, what are we supposed to do? Because I was very much aware of the abortion ban. But in my mind, I was like, she's not compatible. She's not viable. Surely I can get care here. And the doctor said, well, you have 2 options. You can terminate your pregnancy, but due to Tennessee's ban, you can't do that here. You would have to look out of state, and I cannot offer you any resources. Or you can stay pregnant, but you're at risk of miscarriage, stillbirth, or if she were to be born, we would have hospice care set up for her to pass shortly after. And my husband chimed in and he was like, well, how long does she have? Talking about Miley. And the doctor said, there's really no way to tell. She could pass tomorrow, next week, next month. We don't have a way to tell how much longer she would live. But what I can tell you is, the longer you stay pregnant, the worse she is going to get and the higher risk your health is going to become.
Mm.
And when she said that, the thought of continuing my pregnancy, like the hope of like, maybe they're wrong, or just like, maybe I can get through this, like, just the hope that I had just diminished.
Mm.
And so we went home that night, we discussed it, and it made the most sense for myself, my health, and my family, that we don't risk my life to bring a baby to the world that's not going to make it. And so we made the decision to terminate, and I had to start calling out of state, calling different states, calling different clinics, trying to find out who does 20-week abortions, trying to figure out how much it's going to cost. How do I get there? Um,
How long did that take you to find a place that was able to see you?
So I, at the time, had my in-home daycare,
Uh-huh.
and my mom and I both took the day off work and spent the entire day calling clinics. We called about 5 different states. Um, I would say maybe between 8 and 10 clinics total.
Wow.
Um, The problem is like there's clinics close to me in like Illinois, Southern Illinois. But you know, they had longer waiting lists or they were more expensive, or like some clinics, even though they offer abortions, and this is what a lot of people don't understand is just because a state has abortion access doesn't mean it's full access.
Mm.
So like some clinics, they offer abortions, but they stop at 15 weeks,
Mm.
or they stop at 18 weeks, or they stop at 20 weeks. Some offer medical exception abortions after their cutoff time. Some don't. And so you literally have to call these individual clinics to be like, hi, I'm 20 weeks pregnant. My pregnancy isn't compatible and it's putting my life at risk. Do you do medical abortions? Or do you have medical exceptions for abortions this late? And so like that was the hard question I had to ask everybody. And then if they said yes, it's like, okay, so how much is it? And one clinic, just to give you an example, a clinic in Ohio, I think it was the Hope Clinic. Um, at 20 weeks, it was going to be $1,500. And they were like, oh, yeah, we can get you in like this Thursday. And I was like, okay, well, I can't coordinate that fast. Like, do you have anything next week? And they're like, well, next week you'll be 21 weeks. So the cost goes up to $2,500. It jumps up $1,000.
Oh my gosh.
And for a lower income working class family that just bought a house and doesn't have a whole lot of money, $2,500,
It's a lot.
that's a lot. We didn't even have that much in our bank account. And so now I'm scrambling, like, how am I going to afford this? Because every clinic I called, it was at least over $1,000. That's just for the procedure. That doesn't
Mm.
count travel, airfare, hotels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because midterm abortions are a 2-day thing. So
Mm.
you have to stay overnight. Ultimately, I found a clinic in New York City that got me in the following week. Um, all in all, after everything was said and done with the procedure, the airfare, and all that good stuff, it came down to be about $5,000 total. And I'm very fortunate because I, again, was already on TikTok. I was sharing my story in real time and I asked my followers to help and they did. I started to
Amazing.
GoFundMe and they exceeded the limit that I needed. So it's because of complete strangers on the internet I was even able to go. And so I got to a New York clinic in Manhattan on March 7th. My abortion was scheduled for March 8th, but they do pre-testing because you're going to go under anesthesia.
Mhm.
And during the pre-op testing, they do ultrasounds to look at the fetal condition, see how big you are, all of that good stuff. And during that ultrasound is when I found out that my daughter's heart was already gone. Her heartbeat was gone. And the technician had asked, she was like, when was your last ultrasound? And I was like 10 days ago. And she was like, and there was a heartbeat? And I was like, yep, there was a heartbeat. And she just got quiet. I was like, is there not a heartbeat anymore? And she just started to shake her head. And so that that moment was, I think, the hardest for me because I was hopeful that that ultrasound I was going to get to see Miley one last time.
Yeah.
And like I didn't want to be there to begin with. I didn't
Mhm.
want to let her go. I didn't want an abortion. I wanted her to be okay. God, I'm sorry. Um
That's okay. I totally I've had 3 miscarriages myself in Tennessee, and I've been through like similar not as far, but I know the
yeah.
feeling.
It's that feeling of like I knew I had to let her go anyway, but I knew the next day was going to be hard.
Yeah.
And so I like mentally prepared for that. I didn't mentally prepare to hear that she was already gone. Um,
Yeah.
and so the technician again was like, I need to let the doctor know what I found. And so they sent me out to the waiting room and I called my husband because he wasn't allowed at the clinic with me,
Yeah.
patient only clinic. And I had to tell him over the phone that his daughter was gone. And then I called my mom to tell her. And at the time, I didn't really understand the what she was saying to me
Yeah.
because I was so hurt. But now, like I fully get it. But when I told my mom that Miley was gone, she was like, you know, honey, I'm sorry, and I know it's hard. She was like, but I think this is the best gift Miley could have given you.
Mm.
because you went to New York with so much guilt
Yeah.
and so much doubt, asking yourself, like, what if my doctors are wrong? And she took all of that away from you. Miley showed you that you were making the right choice,
Yeah.
and she went on her own time. And she was like, I think that's the best thing for you.
Yeah.
And it, again, it still sucked. Um, but I went back in to the clinic, and the doctor pulled me into a room, and he told me that because my last confirmed fetal heartbeat was almost 2 weeks prior, that there's no way to know when she actually passed. And there's about a 2 week window that when a fetus passes and your body doesn't recognize it, that you're at a higher risk of infections, blood clots, or going septic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he said, because we have to go off of that 10-day ultrasound, um, you're at a higher risk right now. And so instead of my abortion being the next day, it was done within an hour.
Wow.
It happened very fast. And you know, I made a TikTok video yesterday, um, because the news broke that a 28-year-old Georgia mom lost her life
Yeah.
because doctors hesitated to give her the care she needed. And in that video, I was like, you know, if the doctors in New York hesitated for it to till the next day, I don't know if I would be here.
Yeah.
My doctors acted, and at first I was like, oh my god, this is happening so fast, I don't have time to grieve, I don't have time to do anything, but it was to preserve my life and my health. They understood the magnitude of how serious this was, and they didn't hesitate.
Yeah.
And because of that, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
And that Amber Thurman, she's not here because doctors hesitated.
Mm-hmm.
And that breaks my heart. um but that, what I went through coming back to Tennessee, I knew I didn't want anybody else to go through, especially my daughter. I didn't want her growing up. I didn't want her growing up in a place that doesn't value her life.
Mm.
And so that's when I decided that just telling my story wasn't going to be enough. I shared my story. I shared every moment of that. I shared every part of New York, every little bit of heartbreak that I went through online. And I did that because I wanted people to see what these abortion bans were doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to read an article and be like, oh, whatever, she just wanted to kill her baby. But I wanted mine, right? Nobody just wants to have an abortion. That's not
Yeah.
an easy decision. But I wasn't going to let anybody tell my story for me. And so that's why I shared it in such a public way. And I was reached out to by the Center for Reproductive Rights,
Mm-hmm.
asked me if I'd be interested in joining a lawsuit. I said yes, quicker than I've ever done anything, because I was like, okay, this is my chance to make a
Mm-hmm.
difference. And then after a couple months, I was like, this is going to take a really long time. We're still waiting for a response from our hearing like 5 months ago.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was like, I'm not going to sit around and wait for courts to decide what's best. I'm going to do something else. And that's when I started to look into running for office. I met with my now opponent, but current representative last June, and told him my story, told him I wanted to see legislation brought, that gives exceptions for non-viable fetuses, like Miley was. And he said he would help me. And then he ghosted me. And I figured, why wait around for a man to help me when I can do it my damn self?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I really dived in and started doing research. And mind you, not a political person. Had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I announced my campaign on October 2nd last year, and here we are almost a year in. And my district is one of the top two most flippable in the state. And we have a really good chance at flipping this seat. It's going to take people hearing my story, understanding the vast difference between me and him,
Mm-hmm.
and showing up to the polls.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing about Miley and sharing her story and your story. And I completely agree with you. I think that it's I think a lot of people have an idea of like what this whole thing looks like, and it's just like one shade for people, but realizing that there's so many different variables, so many different shades, so many different stories. I feel like it humanizes it. It helps people understand that it's so nuanced. And I think something about you, I remember you met with your opponent and you had talked with him about like how you're a similar age to his daughter and he just still didn't get it. And I think that's something that really scares me about a lot of these lawmakers, specifically in Tennessee as well, is just this complete lack of empathy and
Yep.
ability to even think about someone that is like their own offspring having to go through this. And I think that's why it's even more amazing to have someone like you running who has this like personal story. But even if this had never happened, I think you still have the empathy to understand what it would be like for someone, because that's how you even, we're approaching this before you even knew you were pregnant with Miley. You're like, this is a personal decision and it's
Yeah.
it's really nuanced. um when you did decide to run, what was like the first, like, how do you even start that process?
Well, I'll tell you, after I shared my story and was back in Tennessee, my local county party reached out to me and they were like, hey, we have a safe space for you if you ever wanted to participate. And I had no idea what a local county party was or why they existed. And I was just like, okay. And so I went to one of their meetings and got to know a lot of the people, and I was like, wow, like this is a room of people that agree with me. Like, what is that? um and it was refreshing, and so I stuck around with them, and I started volunteering and getting people registered to vote at local events. And the party chair, his name is Charles Uffelman. He goes by Chaz. He is very persuasive, I'll tell you that. But really, it started with, after my meeting with my representative, my opponent. um, I told my mom what happened, and she was like, why don't you run against him? And I was like, well, why the hell would I do that? And she was like, well, think about it. Like, you have a good story, you're very outspoken, like you're articulate, you just, you're likable, you're relatable. And I was like, okay, that's not qualifications to be a politician, mom. And she was like, you think half the people down there are qualified to be there? And I was like, well,
Yeah.
you're right, but I am also not one of the that's qualified. And she was like, you're just as qualified as any of
Mm-hmm.
them. And she said,
Mm-hmm.
I if not more. And I was just like, okay, yeah, whatever. And so
I
I just
just think of
ignored her.
the like TikTok thing, like what, like a boy can do it, like
Right. Exactly. Um, and I was just, it was, for me, I thought politicians were people that like came from like these backgrounds of like
Mhm.
all this public service, and like they've been in the community for decades. And so I didn't know that you could just run out of nowhere. Um, and so then my friends started bringing it up. But I was like, oh yeah, my mom thinks I should run for office. Like, that's dumb, right? And they were like, no, like you actually should. And I was like, what is wrong with you guys? I feel like I was being punked. Like, where's Ashton Kutcher?
Yeah,
Like, is he
right.
gonna pop out? But then people within the Montgomery County Democratic Party were like, hey, have you ever thought about running for office? I'm like, no, have you? Maybe you should do it. And so it kept popping up and coming up and coming up. And I was like, you know what? I'm one of those people that I believe in universal signs. And if this isn't a sign slapping me in the face
Right.
every 2
Just
days, that's like, hello.
yeah, yeah.
How many more signs can we give you? Um, and Charles Effelman was one of the last people, the chair of the party here, to ask me, like, he came up to me at a Juneteenth event where I was volunteering for the party, and he was like, Come walk with me." And I was like, "Oh God." And so I walked with him, and he was like, "I heard you're thinking about running for office." I'm like, "Who the hell told you that?" "No, everybody else wants me to run." And he was like, "Well, there's resources, there's people here to help you. Like, I'll help you every step of the way." And I was just like, "Okay, listen, I'll look into it, but that's not me saying yes." And he was like, "Okay, all right, that's fine. Look into it." And so I did. I started reaching out to Chaz. Helped me with this because I didn't know anybody. He
Hmm.
he gave me numbers of like current elected officials, past elected officials, people that have ran and didn't win, um, in all levels. So like school board, city council, state rep, Congress. Like, I reached out to people up and down the board.
Hmm.
And I talked to all of them, and I weighed the pros and the cons. And I was like, okay, well, so there's a lot more cons than there are pros being a not wealthy working class mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like this system isn't built for somebody like me to run. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, see, it's not worth it. And but it took me actually like understanding that this is bigger than me. I thought I sat and thought about Adelie, my daughter, and what I wanted for her to grow up in, a place for her to grow up in. And then I was thinking about my best friends. They both have daughters. And I was like, well, I obviously want them to grow up in a good place too. And then I was thinking about my neighbor's kids. And I was like, this is so much more than me. And I put the cons to the side and I looked at the pros, and the pros were that I could make a difference. And even if I don't win this race, which we're trying to manifest that I do, but even if I don't, I showed my daughter that you have every right to fight back against something you know is wrong in your
Mm-hmm.
heart. And that is a legacy I'm okay leaving behind. And so I took a deep breath and I went over to Chaz's house and I let him persuade me a little more. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And then I went and bought my first blazer. I've never owned a blazer before. And I was like, okay, yeah, I look good in these.
Yeah.
Um, and then came building a team,
Yeah. What does
which
that
is
look like?
hard. It is hard. I'll tell you, I got very fortunate. My campaign manager, her name's Megan Lang.
Mm-hmm.
She is a God sent gift to this earth. I met her at a conference, and I was speaking at that conference as a social media person, telling the importance of like the power of social media when telling a story like mine. And so, like, at that point, there was nothing about running for office yet. And I met her very briefly. And then I saw her again at another event. And she was like, hey, she was also one of the people that asked me to run. She's like, have you ever thought about running? I was like, no. She's like, well, if you do, I manage campaigns. And I was like, okay, cool. Why don't you run? She's like, oh God, no, I would never. I was like, okay, so why would I? Um, and then I saw her again and again. And she was like, a fly that you can't get rid of. She just kept coming back. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And once I decided to run, I reached out to her and I was like, hey, remember how you said you like manage campaigns and stuff? And she was like, yeah, why, what's up? And I was like, so I may be doing something and I really need help to get started. I don't know how to get started. And so she helped make my logo. She built my website because that's what she went to school for, was like digital design and stuff like that. And she was like, I will help you find a campaign manager. And yeah, we'll go from there. And so I interviewed a few people. They didn't seem intrigued or enthusiastic about me or my race. They were like, yeah, well, I don't really think that's worth my time. And I was like, okay, well, thanks anyway. And so she stood in as my campaign manager for like the first like month or month and a half before I announced. And she was like, I will do this until we can find the perfect person for you. And I was like, okay, thank you. And then it in that month and a half, I'm pretty sure I asked her like 11 times if she would just be my campaign manager, and she kept telling me no. And then it took me launching my campaign and the email flooding for like 3 weeks after that of endless amounts of media requests. And she was like, you need help. I was like, yeah. She's like, I'm gonna help you. I will do this. I will be your campaign manager. She's like, but you're gonna have to pay me. And I was like, that's fine. Yeah, whatever you need. And so she's been on board since. And because of her connections and Chaz's connections and everybody, I was able to kind of pull together a really solid team. Like, we have our messaging team, we have our media team, we have our persuasion team, we have our mailer, like the people that do our mail, our ads, like all of it, the social media. We've had our ups and downs as a team, but that's with any team.
Sure.
But I think we're really strong right now, and that's because of people she knew and people he knew, because I didn't know any of these people. I was literally coming from ground zero. And so really, like, who
Yeah.
is huge in politics, huge.
Yeah.
But it's because of that I have a great team today.
Amazing. And like, what does that day to day kind of look like with your team?
So we have weekly team calls on Tuesdays. So we had our
Mhm.
team call earlier today. You know, we have like a team chat. So like we'll message each other whenever,
Mhm.
outside of meeting time. But you know, we go over what the last week was, what this week looks like, what we got going on. Like right now, we have our third digital ad running. Our first mail piece is expected to go out soon. You know, we talk about fundraising. We talk about you know, certain kind of messaging guidance that we want to focus on for like that day or the next couple days or whatever. And so it's just kind of like an update, like this is what's going on, this is what we did, this is what we're going to do, see you next week.
Mhm.
And then we'll talk about what we did and then talk
Mhm.
about what we're going to do the next week. And so it's it's good because we all stay on the same page.
Mhm.
um and then if there's ever anything that's like urgent, we can always like call it like an emergency meeting.
Mhm.
There really hasn't been a need for that, because we all stay pretty much in good communication. But it's just, I feel better because like I'm out of the loop on so much because I'm so nosy and I have to know everything. Megan's like, no, let me take care of this.
Yeah.
And so being able to join these meetings and hear what they're all doing, I'm like, oh God, you guys actually are working. That's cool. You actually are doing stuff. Um, but no, they're all great and they're all so supportive, and they all, every single one of them offers a safe space. And
Mhm.
we do have a condition to be on Team Allie. You don't have to love Taylor Swift, but you have to at least, you know, deal with her enough to let me talk about her and play her music. So
I
they're
love
all
it.
inner Swifties, whether
Yeah.
they like it or not.
A
um,
shared passion. You need it. Yeah.
yes. We brought on a new social girl, and I Megan was messaging me. She was like, "Oh, she's great. I met her. Like, she's super fun." And I was like, "But does she like Taylor Swift?" She's like, "I already briefed her on everything Taylor." So, and I was like, "Okay, good."
I love it. I love it. We just got to get Taylor on board now,
Oh my gosh.
sharing the message.
I wish. I wish. If only she was a voter in my district. She is a voter
Right.
in Tennessee, but not
I
my
mean,
district.
listen, crazier things have happened, You had mentioned fundraising, and whenever I think about like just politics, running for office, that always seems like such a daunting part of the process. Like, how do you even go about fundraising? Like, how do you kind of capitalize on momentum you have on like some good press you've just had? Like, how do you try to keep it consistent?
I wish I could tell you what like an average campaign looks like.
Mm,
This being my first campaign so far in my life, I don't know what average looks like other than like my candidate friends. For me, I am very unique in the aspect of I already had media attention long before I decided to announce a campaign.
yeah.
And so my story was already in the public eye, and then announcing a run like outside, like in the public eye because I shared it online and it went viral. And then I was in the public eye again because I joined the lawsuit.
Mm,
And then it was like, oh crap, this woman that was denied an abortion and is suing her state is now running for that state.
hmm.
And so it was like, it was headlining news for a
Yeah.
lot of media outlets. And it was that way for months. And so, like, just to give you an example, the Washington Post did a special piece on me, and I was on the front cover. I didn't know I was going to be on the front cover. They somehow finagled me up there right next to Taylor Swift. Um,
Look,
and
you're already getting
I
closer,
know
you know?
it was a picture of her at a Chiefs game, and I was like, it was talking about her and Travis Kelsey, and I was like, the fact that that makes it into the WAPO is hilarious.
Right,
Um,
right.
but yeah, my picture was right there with her, and that article alone raised my campaign over $100,000
Wow, amazing.
in a day, in
Amazing.
a day. And so, with all of the media that we did, we raised a lot more money than is normal for a state house race.
Okay.
A normal state house race, maybe 150 to $200,000 max,
Like
maybe
over
that
for the
much.
whole
Yeah,
process.
for the whole race.
Okay.
My race, our goal is 500,000.
Mhm.
Um, because I have enough attention and enough public, like outer public support, we've had these funds coming in. Now, I don't know if we're going to reach that 500,000 goal.
Mhm.
We're closer to it, but we're still far enough away. But like regular candidates, they do a lot of fundraising. Like they have fundraisers, they send out a lot of like emails and texts asking for money, which we do that as well. Like we have fundraising emails and texts that go out there like, hey, can you pitch in $5 today? But done I've done 2 fundraisers the
Mhm.
entire campaign. My first one was my launch
Mhm.
campaign fundraiser, and that was back in November. And then same month of November, we did a joint fundraiser for me and 2 other female candidates in
Mhm.
Middle Tennessee. And so everything that was raised was split between the 3 of us. And that was really the last fundraiser I did.
Wow.
Um, well, no, I lied. We recently did one at Nashville for Anzi Blue. Gwen Levy and the Breakdown. I don't know if you've heard of them. They
Mm-mm.
have the viral song right now called Barefoot and Pregnant.
Okay.
If you get a chance, listen to it. Me and Gwen were good friends, and
Mhm.
so she was like, "I want to host a fundraiser for you, and I want to play." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And so we had one in Nashville a few months ago. So I lied. There's three. There was three. But outside of that, there's I'm not doing a fundraiser every month. I'm not
Yeah.
doing that. A lot of it is my social media outreach
Mm.
because I already had a platform. I was able to reach a lot more people than somebody just starting out on social
Sure.
media. It's still hard though, asking people for their hard earned money. I don't like doing. Again, lower middle working class mom. I was raised to work for what you want, don't ask for handouts. So the fact that I literally call people, I'm like, hi, I need your money. Please send me your money. It makes me nauseous. Like I hate it so much. But it's like that's part of politics because I
Yeah.
can't afford to do it
Yeah.
myself. Whereas my opponent, he hasn't done any fundraising. All the money he's received are from PACs,
Mm.
and he self loans his campaign his own money. He
Mm.
has millions. Like he's rich.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't have to worry about fundraising, whereas I rely on people sending me their hard-earned money.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what makes us a people-powered movement,
Mhm.
and a people-powered campaign. But it's also what makes it that much harder because you know some people that we do have like max out donors that have donated the max amount, which
Yeah.
is fantastic, but we also have donors that have donated like $1. I think our lowest donation was like 77 cents.
Mhm.
And for me, I'm like, the fact that that's what they could afford and they
Mhm.
sent that they believe in me that much that they
Yeah.
sent me the little bit that they did have, and that
Yeah.
means so much to me, more than any pack, big corporate pack money would ever mean to
Yeah.
me. Which my campaign isn't accepting corporate pack money,
Mhm.
because I have morals.
I love it. And listen, like I know it feels gross to ask for money, but you are so worth it. What you're doing is so worth it. Like I could say that like until the cows come home. So
It's
let go of that. Like, so happy.
hard.
I know. I know. Listen, I used to be an artist, and a part of being an independent artist is doing a similar thing. Like, you're always asking people to, like, pre save my single, like, go and follow
Mhm.
this link, if you donate to my Kickstarter, whatever. And you're just like, huh,
Yeah.
But it's like, that's how you get stuff done nowadays. That's just part of the process. And you're doing, like, way more important stuff than maybe me making music,
Well, music, hey, don't sell yourself short. Music
I
is such
know.
a powerful healing
It
tool.
is.
So, what I hate so much is I got into this because I wanted to help people,
Yeah.
and knowing that there are people in my community that are struggling, and then here I am like spending $500,000 on ads and signs and shirts and whatever else. I'm like,
Yeah.
that makes me feel like an awful person because that money could help my community.
Yeah.
Like, I would much rather drop the campaign and take that money and help them than continue to take their money. But legally, I can't do that. But the amount of money that is spent in politics is so disgusting.
Yeah.
And it's so discouraging to the average working American person. They're like,
Yeah.
wow, like they can just drop $5 million. Like, look at the presidential races, like
Yeah.
obnoxious the amount of
Yeah.
money that they've raised. And you have people that are homeless. You have kids
Mm-hmm.
that aren't eating lunch at school because their parents lost their job. And it's just like, if I'm able to, I would love to change how races look, at least in Tennessee. I can't obviously change presidential yet. But making it to where the average working person can have a chance at running and it not be about who has the bigger pocketbook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Bill Powers, our current senator in Montgomery County, Karen Reynolds is running against him. She's the Democrat. But Bill Powers, I asked him a few weeks ago at a Big Brother, Big Sister event. I said, "Hey, Bill, if you could give one piece of advice to your old self, now that you know what you know, what advice would you give yourself as a first time candidate?" And he looked at me and he said, "I'll tell you the same thing I told Karen: bring your pocketbook, bring your checkbook." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "Well, it's going to cost you some money. It's going to cost you a lot of money." And I was like, "Well, I don't have a lot of money. So what do you say to people that don't have checkbooks, that, they can just fork out 16, $20,000?" And he was like,
Yeah.
"Well, you better have some friends that have money." I was like, historically, when you're poor, your friends are poor. Like, you don't just have a bunch of rich friends and you
Yeah.
be poor. And I was like, "Well, my friends don't have money either. So there's that." And he was like, "Well, then, you got to network, get to know people that got money and that can help you out." And I'm like, "Why is it all about money?"
Mm-hmm.
And he said that that's how politics is. He was like, "If you don't like it, go change it." And I was like, "Well, you're in office right now. Why don't you change it?" And he was like, "Well, because I told him, I was like, the Republican Party, they're the super majority. Why don't they change it? They have the power and opportunity to change it." And he looked at me and he was like, "Well, your party, they were in charge not that long ago." And he was like, "Why didn't you do something back then?" I was like, "Bill, I was in like fourth grade. I was like 8 years old. What was I
Yeah.
supposed to do?"
Yeah.
But like, don't talk about the Democratic Party not doing it back in 2008, because even if they did, you guys have been in charge for almost 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
You would have changed it.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is you've held a super majority for almost 2 decades and have done nothing to help anybody, to help the
Mm.
working class family. But he just pivoted the blame, and yeah, his advice
Surprise,
to any
surprise.
right. His advice to any first time candidate is bring your checkbook.
And this is why we need people like you running, because you actually want to try and do something about it. And which
Yeah.
circles back to like why we are happy to contribute to your campaign to get you there. What's it been like running in Tennessee on, like, I mean, I know this isn't your only platform, but on a like pro reproductive rights, women's rights platform in a state that seems to be so hostile towards that.
70%, over 70% of Tennesseans are for abortion
Mm,
in some way,
mm,
whether it be like they're just full fledged, yeah, whatever, whenever, I don't care, or they're like, "Oh, okay, medical exceptions," or they're
mm,
like, "Yeah, rape and incest." Like,
mm-hmm.
in some capacity, over 70% of Tennesseans are pro choice in that aspect. Tennessee is not a pro life state. It is not a red state, as many paint it out to be. We are not a voter turnout state. We
Mm,
rank 50th for voter turnout in the country. And Montgomery County, where I live, ranks last in Tennessee for voter turnout. So we are dead last in the nation here, which isn't something to be proud of at
yeah.
all. It should be embarrassing to the people here, to hopefully put like a little kick in their step to be like, "Oh, maybe we should get out and vote. Let's not be dead last for something like democracy." um,
Yeah.
so I will say, my district, I'm very fortunate that my district seems to be very much one of the most pro choice districts out of, I would say, like all the top tier flippable ones. Abortion messaging is like the top messaging across the state. The Tennessean just did a poll yesterday, actually. It was an article about pressuring Marsha Blackburn to debate Gloria Johnson.
Hmm.
And it asked, like, what is your number one issue that you would like to see discussed, or your number one issue that you have? Abortion and reproductive health care was the top one.
Mm.
And then it was second most issue, abortion and healthcare stayed at the top. And then your third most issue was affordability in housing. Of course, I don't know how many people participated in that, but people are saying like abortion and healthcare is their top issue. Even Republican women, even pro-life women, like I was pro-life for myself.
Mm-hmm.
We understand like it's not our place to tell other women what they can and can't do, but also it's childish to think, or it's just immature to think that it won't ever happen to you.
Mm.
That's such a closed off way of thinking,
Yeah.
to be like, oh yeah, like I'm perfectly fine. I would never have to make a decision like that, because you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every pregnancy is different. Every
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy is life threatening. It can go
Mm-hmm.
bad at any moment, any
Mm-hmm.
moment. So when I am out knocking doors, and when I'm making phone calls, and when I'm connecting with people online, it's a lot of the same response. Like, I am so sorry. Like, you shouldn't have had to go through that. Like, our abortion ban is too extreme. It is too extreme. We don't have exceptions for rape or incest. We don't have exceptions for non viable fetuses. And we don't have exceptions for medical emergencies. It's just to preserve life of the mother. But
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean?
Yeah.
That's what the lawsuit I'm in is asking for clarification. What does that mean? Because our lawmakers can't clarify, because they don't
Mm-hmm.
know. They're not doctors. But the fact of the matter is nobody is qualified for that exception. None that's been reported. And even though my life was at risk, I didn't qualify because I wasn't sick enough.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. That's the problem. Not yet. But
Mm-hmm.
why should I have to wait to become more sick to get health care? And so
Yeah.
I would say in this area, reproductive health care and affordability are like the top two things that people talk about the most. And there's a few people that I talk to, and they're like, oh, well, like your case, yeah, you should have been able to get the care. But like the women that just use it for birth control, like all the time, like then that's not okay. And so I do have to do a lot of like voter education,
Yeah.
um, and debunk a lot of that right wing talking point of
Yeah.
women are just using it for fun. And some people are receptive to it. Others are like, yeah, well, I still don't think others, should just be able to use it whenever. And so I cut my losses where I can. But once I like explain to people like these birth control abortions that you're talking about, a lot of them are because their birth control failed.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of failed contraceptives. And
Mm-hmm.
so like they took steps to stop pregnancy, but not everything's 100%, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so finding out they're pregnant and taking mifepristone, the abortion pill, to terminate the pregnancy that they didn't want to begin with, I don't think we should be judging them for that. We talk about women need to take responsibility. How is that not taking responsibility?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so the abortion message is a really solid message to have, and I think the Republican Party knows that. They refuse to talk about it. The amount of articles that I've done, the amount of reporters that have reached out to my opponent to ask for his opinion and his stance, he hasn't responded. He won't do them. And in an NPR interview, they managed to get a hold of the Montgomery County Republican Party chair, Doug England, and he told them that they won't engage in discussing abortion because it's not an important topic. Well,
Your
I think
constituents
yeah,
literally just said it is.
yeah. I was
Yeah.
going to say, I think the people of Tennessee don't agree with that, but
Yeah.
I think they'll find out. Hopefully in November. Hopefully, people that see how extreme they're being and understand that like this isn't the party you grew up with. This isn't the party that holds those Tennessee values that strive off of. Like,
Mm.
this isn't the same party that they claim to be. And I think it's going to take people to go out of their comfort zone and vote for a Democrat when they've always been a Republican, and
Yeah.
understand like that doesn't make you a communist
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
for voting out of your party. Like, that makes
Mm-hmm.
you a human being that has morals and a heart. And to not be ashamed, and obviously nobody knows who you're voting for unless you
Yeah.
tell them.
Yeah.
Like, nobody knows,
Yeah.
literally nobody. And so women, there's a lot of women in this state that feel trapped, whether it be religion or their husband or whatever, their family.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to tell them who you voted for.
Yeah.
And if you do, you can lie if you want. I
Yeah.
don't condone lying, but if they're like, did you vote for Trump? Sure did. But in your heart of hearts, you know you voted for Kamala because she's going to restore your right to reproductive care.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, like your vote's private, and I need people to understand that your vote is private and it does matter. Even in the deepest of the reddest part of Tennessee,
Mm-hmm.
your blue vote matters. And I
Mm-hmm.
tell you that because these local down ballot races, we don't have an electoral college.
Mm-hmm.
We are literally off of the popular vote. So if 50 people vote for my opponent and 50 people vote for, or 49 people vote for me, he wins by one vote.
Mm.
And you're a household of 2 voters and you chose to not show up because you felt like your vote didn't matter in a red state,
Yeah.
I could have won that election if you just would have showed up.
Yeah, it so matters. I mean, I lived in Davidson County for 10 years, and we also have like an abysmal turnout rate, which always shocks me because
Mm-hmm.
there's so many creatives that live in Davidson County, and I'm going to call us all out with love, but like we love to complain about like politics because a lot of us are super lib, and I'm just why y'all not showing up? Like we got to get into local elections, like every
Mm-hmm.
single election. It's not just like the big ones, you know? And every time I see these like voter turnout rates in Davidson County, I'm always like so disappointed in us. And I'm like, it literally is so easy. It's so easy. Like there's so
Early
many
vote.
ways, early vote, like there's
Yeah.
so many ways to be able to make it happen that don't require you to like have to leave work early or do something. Like you can make it happen. So yeah, I hope all of Tennessee just turns out more.
I'll tell you, excuse me. My district has just over like, I think we have like 45 something
Mm,
thousand registered voters out of 75,000 residents. So, like,
mm,
that's a good number of registered voters, I feel. In the primary, you have to pick a party, which I hate because when I go knock doors, I tell people vote for a person and not a party. And then they go
yeah.
to the primary and they got to pick a party.
Yeah, yeah.
A couple people that I spoke with that are like Republican voters historically, they're voting for me this go around, and so
Mm,
they were like, I didn't vote in the primary because there's some Republicans I wanted to vote for, but I also wanted to vote for you, and I couldn't, so I
mm,
didn't vote. And I was like, that's a problem. Okay.
yeah.
But anyways, I was like, the general, make sure you show up to the general. But with my district of 45,000 registered voters, the primary, this last primary in August, my district alone, with the Democrats, the Republicans, and the general voters all together, we had like just at 2,000 people showed up.
I'm picking my jaw up off the floor for anyone who's not watching this and like just listening. That is
Yeah.
insane. That's insane.
Yeah. Just like, and when I say just over, I mean less than 2,100, like just over 2,000. And so the numbers, though, I had 901
Hmm.
and he had 1160.
Hmm.
So like we were, what is that, 250 something apart.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
so
not a
like when I
lot.
say every vote matters, like, I have a 250 vote gap I got to close between him,
Hmm.
which isn't hard, or not isn't going to be as hard if people just show up.
Yeah.
Now I'm hopeful that because of the change in the ticket,
Hmm.
that people are rallied to get out and vote for Kamala Harris and Tim
Hmm.
Walz, and that they'll show up and vote. But Montgomery County as a whole in the primary, just at like 9% voter turnout
Wow.
for the whole county.
Wait, well, this leads to my next question. Like, what can people do to get involved in their local elections, other than like running for office, right? Like that's like probably the most like intense thing you can do in terms of being involved in politics. Like, what has been really helpful for you that your supporters have done to help get the word out?
So, the best ways to get involved, one, you need to find a local candidate, whether that's going to be your state house, your state senate, your school board, city council. Find somebody that you know hold your values, not
Hmm.
think that you know hold your values, and that you know is fighting the fight that you want to see won. Find that candidate, find that campaign, reach out to them. This is what we need, especially here in Tennessee, especially in my district. These flippable districts, we really need boots on the ground volunteers. it's hard to find people to care, especially here in the South. Like blue people, like blue voters to care because they just feel so disconnected. They feel ignored, which is valid. But a lot of them don't realize they have Democratic candidates running. And so spreading the word, like sharing, like, hey, did you know that there's a Democrat running in our district? Oh, I had no idea. We need money for one. So if you have $1, if you have $100, if you have $1,000 to spare, every little bit helps. So donate if you can. If you can't donate time or money, donate time. We need volunteers. So we need people to knock doors. That's direct one-on-one voter contact. It can be scary, yes. But the thing about campaigns is we make door knocking so fun and so easy. Like you end up leaving with like amazing conversations that you'll remember probably for the rest of your life. And it also helps you meet people in your community. So that's also impactful. So door knockers, we need people to do phone banking. I know my campaign personally, we do virtual phone banks. So like you can do it from anywhere in the world. So you don't have to live here to help. And what it is we give you a list. We give you this like software that you log into. It has people in my district. You call them. Hey, have you heard of Allie Phillips? No, great. Let me tell you about her. And then you tell people about me and you hear what their concerns are as voters. That again is one-on-one voter contact. It is so impactful. Outside of that, we need people to help amplify our campaigns. So majority, if not all candidates have a social media account for their campaign. Share their content, engage with their content, help boost the algorithm to push their stuff out. If you see them posting like a fundraising link, even if you can't donate, share it. Be like, hey, friends, who can donate to this? If you see events that they're posting, share it. Even if you can't go, hey guys, look, this is going on Saturday. Just helping us boost and amplify our messages and the things that we're doing within the campaign helps so much because you may not be able to participate, but if you share it and like 20 other people are like, oh yeah, I can go to that. Great. We reached 20 other people that we may not have if you didn't share it. So the power of social media, I cannot stress this enough as a social media candidate myself. It literally is going to like make or break politics moving forward. And what's funny about my campaign is I'm pretty sure I'm one of the first like social media people to actually run for office. And so like the party and everybody's like, we don't know what to do with her. They're like, you need to scrub your socials. And I was like, there's no way in hell I'm scrubbing all that. Like that is years. And I was like, but I also like, I'm authentic with who I am online. And I'm not like upset or embarrassed. I'm sure there's some videos that I'm like, maybe not. But like, other than that, people follow me because I'm authentic and I'm a real person. And I hold true to that. But social media is such a powerful tool. We've learned that. We know that TikTok is like a wildfire, you know? So sharing word of mouth, donating time or money, all of those are great ways to get involved. If you don't know how to get in contact with a candidate or campaign directly, find your local county party. Almost every county party has one or county has one. If not, try and get in touch with your state party. Somebody somewhere knows how you can get involved. And even if it's like not working directly with campaigns, if you work with the party, you help also with voter outreach by calling voters and being like, hey, did you know there's candidates running? Did you know early voting is on these days? It's also a lot of voter education. A lot of people don't know when early voting is. A lot of people don't know where their voting location is. Like this kind of stuff is so vital to making sure we have a smooth and successful election process, especially here in southern states where voter suppression is a big issue. Especially in our lower income communities, they don't have as much access as people that live in wealthier communities do. So there's so much unity that needs to go on here. It's not a one person team. It takes everybody, but it's doable. And you just have to be willing to put in the work. And it's not even like, it's not a full-time job. Like maybe, 3-5 hours a week, a day, whatever you can give, we accept. Like if you can only phone bank for an hour with me, great. Our time frame is 3 hours. But if you can do an hour, that's incredible. You know how many people you can call in an hour? A lot.
Totally.
So it's just finding time to donate is huge. I think that's the biggest thing is that one-on-one voter contact. That's really going to make the difference for everybody.
Yeah, I'm gonna put links to your socials, obviously, and also like how people can volunteer and donate, like in all the show notes. So for anyone listening, make sure you check those for sure to get involved in Allie's campaign. Last question: if you're elected this election cycle, which I really hope you are,
When I'm elected, we're gonna
when you're,
manifest
you know what? Let's name and claim that shit. When you are
it.
elected, what do you hope to accomplish? Like what by the time you leave office, what would have made all of this worth it for you?
When I first announced my campaign, I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I had all these great ideas. But after seeing what our legislature has done in the last couple sessions, they've caused a lot of damage and a lot of
Yeah.
harm to communities across the state. And so going into it, I don't know if I will have the privilege of just being able to focus on what I truly want to fix and do, because I
Sure.
think there's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen.
Yeah.
A lot of like repealing these laws and putting forth amendments and stuff like that. But when I look at like the bigger picture of things, restoring reproductive health care is huge for me. Like I won't stop until that's done, whether I'm in office or not. That is going to be the death of me, and I will keep going until I'm dead. Like that's my goal. And I won't leave this earth until I know that my daughter is in a safe space, hopefully. um, Other than that, my focus is safety, affordability, taking care of our working and lower class, our veterans, the people that devoted their lives to keeping us safe. I want to increase minimum wage. We're still sitting doormat at 7.25 an hour. That's not a livable wage
Mm-mm.
for anybody. So increasing minimum wage, the cost of everything else has gone up except our paychecks, making sure that housing is affordable and attainable, putting caps on rent so the landlords can't price you out of your home just because they want to. Like that should be illegal
Mhm.
to do that to people. And other things that I really want to focus on are programs that would help working class families.
Mm.
So like universal pre-K.
Mm.
I was a single mom for the first 3 years of my daughter's life, paying for childcare and going to college full time and working 3 jobs just to get by. You shouldn't have to do that in the
Mm.
greatest country in the world.
Mhm.
Um, but I did because I had to. I didn't have a choice. So universal pre-K that helps families, with their young ones. Not only does it help them start learning at a young age and a vital age, but it also helps the working parents knowing like my child's getting an education, I can still go to work and I don't have to break the bank to do it. Because we're at a point now that it's almost near to impossible to have a one income family, but it's also not beneficial to have both of you working and paying for childcare because the
Mhm.
childcare takes away one of the other's paycheck. So
Mhm.
it's like, why don't you just stay home and we don't pay for childcare? Like,
Mhm.
so universal pre-K is huge. I would love to do what Governor Tim Walz did and pass legislation that gives free breakfast and lunch to
Mm.
every kid in Tennessee. And the fact that that's not a thing, the fact that they voted against that before
Mhm.
is very telling.
Yeah.
Um, Passing legislation to keep people safe, sensible gun legislation. I'm not here to take away your guns. I don't want your guns. I just want them safer. I want people to feel safe. Um, Focusing on expanding healthcare so every
Mhm.
Tennessean can go to a doctor without breaking a bank. Capping insulin because they need it to survive. My campaign manager is a diabetic. She relies on insulin and she pays like $4,000 a month for it. That's insane. Some people don't make that much a month. So, like, what are you supposed to do if you can't afford it? You just die.
Yeah.
Like we we have opportunities to do so much better, and we don't.
Mm.
They don't. Let me say that
Mhm.
they don't, because there's nothing in it for them because they're not the working class. So why would they help us?
Mhm.
Abolishing the grocery tax. That's
Mm.
something Representative Afton Bain proposed. That
Mhm.
would put money back into Tennesseans' pockets. Not a crap ton, but those taxes they add up.
Yeah.
And for a low income family, $20 a month, that could be the difference.
Yeah.
Um, and so, getting rid of the grocery tax, getting rid of gas tax.
Mhm.
Um, there's just so many things that they charge us that anything to take more money out of our pockets, the pockets that barely have any money in them,
Mhm.
they will do. And I want to reverse all of that the best way that I can without it hurting consumers were hurting corporations. Corporations, listen, a billionaire should not be paying the same amount in taxes as a single mom working 3 jobs. Mm-hmm. The fact that that's a thing, I don't understand how that doesn't upset everybody. So billionaires, millionaires, whoever, big corporations, they need to pay their fair share in taxes and quit putting the cost down on the consumer. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that there's a long list of things that I would love to do. Reality, will the supermajority allow me? Doubt it. Because, even if I win the seat, there's still a supermajority. Mm-hmm. We have to flip 10 seats to get rid of the supermajority and just make them a majority. Will that happen this year? I don't think it will. I'm hopeful, but I don't think it will. I'm also a realist. But could it happen in a couple of years? Absolutely. 100%. We just have to mobilize and organize now and move that needle. But what I tell people is, when I win, I won't be taken seriously. I know I won't. I'm going to be the youngest woman in the house. The fact that I'm a woman already just disqualifies me from them taking me seriously. But also, I'm a kid in their eyes. I'm 29 years old. They're not going to take anything I say into account. But I think knowing that I'm headstrong and my parents raised me to take no shit, I think I will, if they don't take me seriously on their own, I will make them take me seriously, because if I'm elected into that house, I'm there to represent people of my district. And so are they. So I don't know if they remember that, but they're there to be a voice for people other than themselves. So it's going to be, I've been told it's a very toxic work environment, which is fine by me. But I'm going to wear my friendship bracelets. I'm going to wear my pink and my sparkly shoes, and I'm going to make them all turn their heads when I walk by. And I'm okay with that.
I love it. I'm here for it. I just have really loved talking with you today, and just getting educated on this whole process too. This episode is like first time running for office, and I really hope that your story inspires more people to take action and realize that, like, you don't have to come from all this money. You don't have to have been involved in your community or have gone to school for like poli-sci to become a candidate. That anybody can really do this. It's just about like having the like chutzpah to go out and make it happen, And I'm so grateful that you have taken this on. I know it is not an easy task, and I'm sure it's exhausting. I'm sure the stress outweighs the benefits on like the day-to-day basis, but just, it means so much to fellow women who, haven't been in your position, but could be at some point, and to other women who have been in similar positions. It really means a lot that you have like stepped up and are going for it, and I just have so much respect for you, and I'm so grateful for your time today, and thank you so much for just being on the show.
Well, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope it encourages others to stand up and fight back too.
Thanks so much again to Allie and her team for making our conversation happen today. If you're as inspired by Allie as I am and you want to help her campaign, whether you live in Tennessee or not, I've included links in the show notes on how you can donate and volunteer for her. If you're driving or can't check the show notes right now, you can go to allie4tn.com. That's ALLIE, the number 4, tn.com when you're able, and all of the info is there. You can also follow her on Instagram at Allie4tn and on TikTok at .allie.phillips. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram, you can do that at Dani Official. That's DAANI Official, and I'm on TikTok at _Dani Elliott, DANIELLIOTT. First Time for Everything is produced by Sheilas Productions, and our theme song Closer is sung by me, written by me in the Royal Foundry, and produced by the Royal Foundry, who, by the way, just won Alternative Song of the Year at the YYC Music Awards in their home country of Canada. So just want to give them a shout out and congrats to them on that. Thank you guys so much for being with me today for our episode, and remember, it's never too late for your first time.